Coach Roy here. Today, let's talk about carb cycling. So, carb cycling is essentially just cycling your carbs throughout the week to account for special events, parties, weekends, and again, just eating more on the weekends. So, who is carb cycling best for? Someone who wants a super easy to follow structure to help them lose weight or maybe even gain weight. But for the context of this video, we will be talking about to lose weight. All right. So, with that being said, something to keep in mind to lose 1 pound of fat, roughly, that will equal to a 3,500 calorie deficit. All right. So, keep that in mind. So, let's go over some definitions that you'll need to know for this nutritional approach. So, normal carb days equals carbs with all meals, just like normal, right? Medium carb days will be carbs with one meal. And then low carb days will be no direct sources of carbohydrate intake. And I will have a list at the end of this presentation for you. So don't worry about that. All right. So, how does this actually work? Let's say we'll use this as an example. 1 cup of rice is roughly about 206 calories. All right. And let's say the daily average intake is 4 cups of rice. It doesn't necessarily have to be rice, it could be like potatoes or breads. But for the sake of this, we are going to be using rice as the example. And that would come out to about 824 calories. Right. So when we implement low carb days, let's say 4 days out of the week, what we would do is times four times 824 calories, because those are the calories that you would be essentially taking out of your diet. And that would come out to 3,296 calories. So just about at that 3,500 calorie mark to lose about 1 pound body fat per week. All right. So this is a little visual, and this is what a carb cycle would look like. And I recommend you spacing your low carb days out with your normal carb days, especially when you're starting out. I don't recommend you doing, 3, 4 low carb days in a row, just for the sake of sanity and just energy levels, right? So try to space out your normal carb days throughout the week. And then I also recommend, if you are working out, plan to do them on your normal carbohydrate intake days. All right. So this is actually another example of a carb cycle. And this is actually what I recommend for you who are just starting out or beginners to all of this. It's a little bit more of a moderate approach, but I would rather you take this more moderate approach than to go all in with 4 5 low carb days. It's a little jarring, especially when you're starting out. So this is what it would look like: no normal carb day, low carb day, low carb day, medium carb day, low, medium, normal. Right. And again, just to reiterate, I do not recommend doing all low carb days, like 7 days out of the week, especially if you are starting out. I actually don't recommend that for anyone. Right. And I think you should have at least 2 normal days throughout the week. Try to space them out. And again, this is how I would kind of gauge all of this. Is I would start off with more normal days. So the bottom example that we have here. And then, if your weight isn't dropping after 2 weeks or so, then you can drop down a little bit more, right? So maybe one of those medium carb days become a low carb day. But this is a really great way to transition into this new approach, right? So pros and cons of a carb cycle. Oops, this is supposed to say carb cycle. Sorry for that. So pros, they are great for people who don't want to track calories or macros, because again, we are just essentially taking out carbohydrates, which is a macronutrient that is non-essential, meaning that we don't need to have it into our diet. I'm not saying you shouldn't be eating it. I do believe you definitely should be eating carbohydrates. It is our body's preferred source of fuel, but it's just an easy way to take some calories out. Right. It also provides an easy to follow structure for your nutrition and allows you to customize your diet and eating to lifestyle preferences and social events. Some of the cons: results vary a lot based on your individual starting point. So, depending on how much carbs you're eating throughout the day, how little carbs you're eating, how much weight you have to lose, the results are going to vary heavily. right? So just keep that in mind. It could also cause some big rebound effects if taken too extremely. And that's why I always recommend you taking a more moderate approach to this instead of, you know, going straight into the deep end and possibly having a rebound. Lastly, it can be difficult to adjust without guidance if this is, you know, something that's new for you, especially if you don't have a basic foundation of knowledge with nutrition, macronutrient satiety, food volume, all of these different things. And then, so this, no, carbs don't make you fat. Overeating calories does. Right? Don't be afraid of carbohydrates. And this is not keto. I do not recommend keto for the general population. Eat your carbs. They are delicious. And this is the list of carbohydrate sources that I mentioned at the beginning. Screenshot it, save it, but that's here for you.